section that I'll provide is from the concluding story, which is called Creatures of the Mind. Little by little throughout the book, this impresario, this opera director, theatrical general manager, author, impersonator, insinuates himself into the stories. And by Creatures of the Mind, it is very evident. Creatures of the Mind works with the opera Tales of Hoffmann, which itself is Jacques Offenbach's attempt to tell the story of the great writer E.T.A. Hoffmann and composer, and the entire opera is set in a restaurant next door to an opera house that is performing Don Giovanni. So it's a opera about a writer that's set in the middle of an opera that's going on as the writer-composer tells the story of his life. E.T.A. Hoffmann, you may remember, named himself, changing his name to Amadeus, that's the A, after his hero, Mozart. In my story, the authorial figure known as Geoffrey Green is purported to have had a middle name that was dubiously changed. I'll read you two little bits of this and then take any questions you might have. This author, in the role of E.T.A. Hoffmann, is addressing his friends in a pub or tavern, or maybe a bookstore connected near the opera. Friends, you may recall that I am not immune to this demonic inclination. Do you recall the evening spent in my reading aloud to you my story about the tenor Enrico Caruso and that wonderful opera of Puccini's? You, Nicklaus, will remember more vividly than most. Well do I remember, in the midst of that flood of memories, the confused and disoriented response of many of you listeners, like here. It had caused you some dismay that I was the narrator of that story. This purported middle name controversy of Geoffrey Green is that his name was changed to Dennis. The narrator says, "You, Dennis, commented to me after my reading that I had depicted myself as being even more arrogant and haughty than I am in life. Do you remember? I thought that you would. I remarked in response that it was not I who had been depicted as arrogant and haughty in this story, even though the narrator referred to himself as Geoffrey Green throughout the fiction. No, I was the Geoffrey Green who had been responsible for creating the fictional depiction of Geoffrey Green as being arrogant and haughty. Is it any wonder that I am now obsessed with E.T.A. Hoffmann? And even then, when does the recession cease? When E.T.A. Hoffmann represented himself in his stories, wasn't he in some sense also representing himself in his life? If Hoffmann was the one who had doubled himself throughout his fiction, who was it who had named him E.T.A. Hoffmann? Wasn't he, even then, standing outside himself as a character? To provide you with a glimmer of Hoffmann's temerity, it would be as if I were not speaking to you at this very moment, but instead were being depicted as speaking to you by a shadowy double of myself, who was the real author of your author and your reader. Nonsensical, you say? Nicholas, you're laughing hysterically. I could not agree more. Nevertheless, this is what Hoffmann achieved, and I am, hundreds of years after his death, resoundingly in awe of him. and Hoffmann saw himself as trapped, pinned beneath these two contradictory desires. On the one hand, he lived for art, producing literature, aesthetic criticism, music criticism, painting, and every conceivable other form of artistic expression. On the other hand, he wrote himself into his stories, inserted himself as a real presence within the shadowy realm of fiction, as if to acknowledge that there was a vacuum in his life, an emptiness resultant from his artistic enterprises. Time devoted to art is time lost to life. Such time is precious and is achieved by believing in its value. Would such a creator advocate the idle wasting of time in order to foment an art that would be indistinguishable from garbage to the common audience member? No, 1,000 times no. In fact, Hoffmann penned a story in which the ghost of the composer, Gluck, returns to inform Hoffmann of the speciousness of modern audiences and performers. Do you think that the composer scribbled in the overture so that it could be played just as one pleases, like a little piece for the trumpet? Hardly. Every indication of the artist's purpose is hallowed. Thank you very much. I will be delighted to take any questions or comments if there are any. Speechless, eh?